Welcome to live Karina Dorothy Krill, CDKx with Nancy Barrows. And this is a special one just by the very virtue of who is in our presence today. We've got crazy hair, no beanies, and we're here fully present with each of you. So thanks for joining in. And I just got the LinkedIn Live notification, so wonderful. You want to introduce yourself, Nancy, to all the lovely people who may not know you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the appreciative words of who I am. That is very that's a lovely gift. I am Nancy Barrows, like you said. I'm a lot of things, but at present, yes, I am non-beanied, and I am stepping into my power, and I've regained my voice. I have been speaking on social media everywhere I can possibly be about taboo subjects, and specifically for me, I've been relating the story of my trauma. And for your audience, I like to just say there's a trigger warning here for sure. This is not an easy conversation. This is not a conversation you've probably had before, but receive it.
I'm going to jump in and say too that don't be afraid of triggers necessarily. Triggers can be trigger, but just because, and you know this, trigger is a word that gets used a lot, and people are like, no, but that's because it's a yucky feeling, you know. But please, I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that doesn't mean you should shut it off. Just leave it open.
I appreciate that, because you know that I'm all about no word is void and reframing and making sure that we're using powerful words. And, to me, a trigger is a moment of awareness, right? And what you do with it is like you said, it can be uncomfortable. What you do with it is really the story. So, okay. So receive it how you want to. Again, that's permission. People feel bad sometimes about their reactions to it. Please don't. I've had all those feelings myself. But I was sexually abused by my grandfather until I was 16 years old. And at that time, what happened was a mandated reporter, did what they were absolutely supposed to do, and unknowing to me at the time, saved my life, and reported it to the authorities. And so this secret that I had been holding on to my whole life, as if my life depended on it, was ripped from me. This thing that I had total control over, and that's what made my life tolerable, that made me be able to get up every day and think I was okay and going to make it, was ripped from me. It was no longer under my control, and it was unleashed on the people around me. And so there's a lot more that goes with that, and there is a whole story, and we can get into it if we have time, but it's also out there. It's out there on my YouTube channel. It's out there on LinkedIn. It's out there on Facebook. So
I didn't know that. You didn't? I didn't. Okay. I mean, Thank you for sharing that story. And
of course,
it's not easy to share those stories, obviously. But wow, I mean,
I didn't realize. See, and I assume that certain people in my life, because of the connection we have, are aware of my past. So then let me complete the story a little bit for you. So 16 years old.
Well, first, let me just welcome everyone that's joining. We've got everyone so eager to hear your stories. I want to make sure they feel acknowledged as well. And but know that we can definitely talk about that if you want to. It's completely up to you. I know how it is sometimes when you're an advocate for specific things. It's almost okay, obligatory share, but I just want to make sure you know that you're welcome to. I'm welcoming you specifically, Nancy, to share whatever feels natural to you. You know what I mean?
Yes, I definitely appreciate that.
Okay, cool. Please, though, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're not. It's fine. Please. Katie J. This community on LinkedIn is just amazing. Brian and Teresa, thank you. So, okay, let's just finish the story so you have it. And you're actually a great person for me to tell this whole story to, because I do believe that you are one of those people who would ask insightful questions, which other people are often afraid to do. So, thank you. So I was sexually abused, and this secret was unleashed on me and my family. And that's what it felt like. Prior to that, my view of it was I was the only one being hurt, but by telling, I had now hurt everyone around me. Therapy years later, I realized that, of course, these people were being affected. It just was much more covert about how that was happening. Sorry, I'm going to say hi, Teresa. Hi, Brian. Hi, Melody. This family
It's
is,
okay. Brian's saying hi for everyone while
there you go. Brian, keep a list, please. Brian, do what I do for you.
He is. He definitely is.
And so I had a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that happened immediately. So two things were happening in the immediate. The secret was ripped from me, this thing that I had control over and that really defined my life in a way, like, making sure this wasn't known, and this total loss of control. And I can speak about it now as if like in a somewhat dispassionate way, but at the time this was devastating for me. It was absolutely devastating for me. And pretty immediately I started my journey down the road of anorexia. I became really restrictive with my eating, and then I full on, transitioned, not a great word, but I crossed the line into anorexia. And that at the time, I didn't see it, of course. Hindsight, everybody watching, you have to go through it to understand when you look back. That's one of the biggest things. And you also have to go through it to be able to look back and have gratitude for it, for all of it. And I was a survivor until I was able to have gratitude for all of it. And I'm not saying that's easy, but I can tell you it is 1,000% worth it. So I started being really restrictive with my eating, and that was about control. It was about hating my body because it had betrayed me. Every cell in my body did exactly what it was meant to do: sexual touch, pleasure. But I hated my body for doing that because I didn't want it. It confused this little girl, and it definitely didn't feel right. And so I hated my body for doing that. So, one way to punish my body was to not feed it, not give it nutrients, not give it the things it needs to take care of me. And finally, the other piece was I wanted to disappear. I never had true suicidal ideation, but I definitely went to bed many more than one night thinking, okay, universe, if somebody's going to get a terminal diagnosis tomorrow, give it to me, right? They have a love for life. They want to be here. Let me take that. Let me be that be my gift to that person. And so,
you've got that natural tendency to want to be like compassionate toward others. Like that's just part. If you know Nancy, you know that that's like the nature, right? So then it's like turning that into like, but just like not toward myself, please. Like at that point in time in your
at that point in time, for sure. And so, this was developing. I went to college. I was still trying to act so quote unquote normal and fit in, which, once relationships became intimate and there were dynamics in relationships that were things that I just couldn't do. I could either be sexually, I don't want to say intimate, but I could be sexually, right? I could be sexually involved, or I could be a sexual being with someone, or I could have an emotional attachment.
But I couldn't.
You're absolutely right. And so I thank the little girl who survived. Like I look back at pictures of me when I was that age, and I wonder, like, I have such deep gratitude. Like, thank you for everything you did with the tools that you had that got me to the place where I am. Where I was able to start healing and where I am now, right? That little girl didn't have tools. She did everything she could. She was looking out for my best interest the entire time. And she's a brave little sucker. She never gave up. And so, that is one of the things I'm so, so grateful for. And it's easy to look back at her with my 40-year-old brain and have all sorts of judgments about her. 48 years old, but in my 40s, look back at her and have all sorts of judgment on her. But the reality is she was brilliant, and she was fierce, and she was a warrior because she figured out a way. So then again, that's that gratitude looking back. I have immense gratitude for her doing whatever she could to get me to the point of healing. The next big piece in the puzzle is when I was 20 years old, I decided to confront my grandfather.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was the precipitating event to my first major depressive episode. It was, there's so many pieces and parts to it, but that's for another show. But the big one that really hit me was my grandfather had admitted to one instance, and it was something that I did not remember. And that totally threw me off my
Wow.
axis. Yeah. Threw me off my axis. And in the sense of like, oh my God, there's so much more that I don't know. What don't I know? Is this all going to creep up on me when I'm not ready? Do I need to know it? Am I going to be able to know it? And can I move forward without knowing it? And so these huge, very weighty questions just all slam me at the same time. And yeah, it precipitated
this might be my like external whatever, but I would imagine if I was in that situation, I might even feel like angry about like I shouldn't even have to be thinking about this. Like I should just be able to be like, do I want to have a martini or whatever at tonight's party? You know, like not that people in college are having martinis. What am I talking about?
I wasn't that sophisticated. I had a red cup and a keg, you know.
What I'm talking about, literally. But you get what I was saying. Like, yeah, like should I do a keg stand or should I take a shot or whatever this stupid
thing. There you go.
Whatever you and Raquel were up to in college.
Like, beer funnels. Did she talk about those?
I haven't heard about the beer funnel.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put that for the other show too. No, but I'm just saying, like, I can imagine that I would feel probably like, well, not woe is me because it's so totally justified. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't have to be worried about that bullshit at all.
Right. My decisions at 20 years old should have been far more trivial.
Right.
Far more trivial. Not unimportant, but trivial. And yes, every decision impacts. We can acknowledge that. But let's between you, I, and the people listening, trivial. But I was angry, Karina. I was. What I was angry about was here. I've been told my whole journey that this was not my fault. And I accepted that at some point. This was not my fault. And I didn't always feel that way. I felt that I was complicit. I felt that I was as much to blame. I couldn't tell anyone because I was just as bad as he was. And so I spent a lot of time getting to the point where, like, okay, I did nothing wrong. But the reality of it was he took responsibility, at least for some piece of it, and nothing changed. I was still left with all the shit, right? All the crap, all the shit that was holding me back, all the psychological stuff, all the fears, all the maladaptive behaviors. I didn't get to hand those over to anyone and say, here, wasn't my fault. This is yours, not mine. I never got to do that. It's one of the problems. I don't say problems. It's one of the challenges of healing from trauma, especially something like sexual abuse. And I'm sure there are plenty other traumas where people we are typically not to blame for our traumas. I will say that. I was like 99.9% of the time we are not. We don't walk in looking to traumatize ourselves. But that piece of it's not our responsibility yet. We're stuck with all the shit. The other thing that we love to do is we give ourselves a grading system. We have the trauma report card. So whose trauma is worse than the other person's trauma?
Oh yeah. That's always,
yeah. Something. And I've had people say, well, mine wasn't as bad as yours. And but it's not that. It's not about comparing it at all, because the reality is trauma occurs when the system perceives itself as overwhelmed, right? It can't handle what's happening. And
so it doesn't really matter what the stimulus is.
Exactly, because the trauma response is the same.
Well, it does matter, but it doesn't outweigh anything.
Yes, it matters because that's a big piece of it.
Two people could go through the same exact stimulus and have totally different responses.
Exactly. And it doesn't make someone's more or less. People have apologized to me, like, well, I've not been through anything like you. Have you lived a life? Because if you've lived a life, you have been through. That's the end of the sentence. It's not what I've been through.
Also, I just want to call that out too, because to me, when I hear that, that's actually like a self-pitying statement. Which I know that might sound backward, but it's still like putting you know what I mean? Like,
I think it's also
self-pitying. That's like maybe a harsh criticism, but what I'm saying is like, if what the attempt is in a moment is to acknowledge what the other person has gone through, then it should be about you. Which saying like, I haven't gotten through anything like you, your thing sounds like so much harder than what I've been through. That's not actually a supportive statement necessarily.
Yeah.
It could just be like, what you have gone through, I'm amazed at the person that you are today, or something like that. Yeah. Like that's really what you're trying to say, right? So
that's powerful to me. to say. Absolutely. But I also, and I agree with you. And this is where it's so tricky because there's so many dynamics, and there's just the reality is there's so many dynamics. And but sometimes I think it's someone needing permission to hear, like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no comparison. If you had trauma, you had trauma. Like, what you're feeling is valid. Just because it wasn't, a prolonged, abusive relationship with a family member that crossed all sorts of boundaries and led to all sorts of things that I had to fight through, doesn't mean that your experience isn't valid. Like, no, I give you permission for yours to be as big as mine, as bad as mine, as hard to get through as mine, as difficult to process as mine. And so, but I can see where it comes back to the person. But I think there are people who are really struggling with just even owning theirs.
Oh my God, yes. And that, I'm so glad that you said that, because I realized once I said that, it almost sounded like nitpicking. And that's not what
no, that's not who you are. It's not how I heard it. So that's
I'm glad that that's not how you heard it. And that makes me feel good to know that. But I also recognize that in a moment and out of context, it might seem a certain way. So the acknowledgement is, I want to make the acknowledgement there that that's not what it's about. It's just that, I guess the core lesson is being really mindful about separating our traumas from one another in a way that's healthy, which doesn't have to be like, they don't have to be related. Like the oppression of women and the oppression of Black people, they're both terrible. And they also actually come from like the same source. It's like a white patriarchal system. Right. So the idea, and those are just two examples for this one specific moment, but like the idea of saying like, oh, well, your thing's not as bad as my thing, or my thing's worse than yours. We're losing sight of the real thing that's going on because it's coming from the same source. And we actually have, because of that, we have a lot more in common than we have as differences.
Absolutely. I say that all the time. We are far more alike than we are different. And I think
have you read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings?
I have, but it's been a long time. I probably should pick it up again.
I haven't been able to finish it myself because it's like, but not because it's not good. It's amazing. Right. It's just, like it's very,
sometimes the things that reach us, speak to us the strongest are hard to get through. But I love that what you're going at, Karina. What I got out of it is, how do we support someone when they come to us with our trauma? What can we say that's helpful? What can we say that feels supportive? What can we say that, really creates that space for someone? Like you said, like, wow, that must have been really hard to get through, or you're so strong that you're here today, right? How do we receive it? What can we say that makes people feel seen, heard, valued, their experiences valid? And I think it's a great conversation to have, and we can have it now or another day. But I think that there's a lot of there's so many pieces to this. And I will say, one of the things I do want to say, and I'm very passionate about this, and I'm also quite frustrated, because the reality is, this came out when I was 16 years old, and I mentioned I'm 48 years old. There has been zero change. The needle has not moved at all on sexual abuse. The conversations have not moved forward. The perception around them. I kept my secret even into my adulthood, because I work with kids, and people have ideas about people who've been abused who choose to work with kids, right? So nothing has changed in this dynamic. And the reality is, we have held the cure to this disease all along. The entire time it's been there, but nobody's willing to be uncomfortable. People can't tolerate that, because if we were talking to kids about boundaries and what doesn't feel good to you, regardless if it would feel good to someone else, regardless of who you're in the situation with, if it doesn't feel good to you, you tell. And as adults, we were creating space and receiving that in a way that really showed that we meant that. There'd be nowhere for a perpetrator to hide. This is a very different conversation. So that's really hard for me, because I know, that you can't crawl on the computer. No. Okay. Hi, you're cute. Say hi. Bye. There's it's hard for me to tolerate that people are unwilling to be uncomfortable when it means so much, when so much is
You know what, Nancy? Why do we have to tolerate that?
I don't. That's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it because the more I talk about it and people hear it, it's going to be uncomfortable. I get that. We don't talk about quote unquote normal sex. So you want to talk about things that leave the path into places that really make people uncomfortable. Here we are. This is the spot. But we have to get comfortable in our discomfort. Not just around this. I think about most things. We need to get comfortable in our discomfort and be willing to just be there and sit with it and see how we move forward from it, how we start to tolerate our own feelings about it, but are mindful of the greater good and the gift we are giving and being willing to be in that space.
I think that was a great answer. I mean, wow, that's really powerful. I can't believe I didn't know this testimony. I knew parts. I didn't know the whole. Well, I still don't know the whole thing. But
I'm very open to talking. I'm very open to questions. This is why I am telling my story because I can, honestly. There's a lot of people, men and women, who go through what I've gone through or something similar, who do not come out the other side.
Yeah.
Period, or do not come out whole on the other side. And I was watched over and given resiliency that makes no logical sense that I would have at that age, but certainly did embody. And I had the best of a worst situation in terms of family supporting me and believing in the therapies that I needed and never doubting. And I was able to heal. I mean, I had a therapist that once said to me, "This is just going to be a page in your book." And I was like, yeah, right. That's never happening. Like, that's never happening. Like, how is this not going to be with me for the rest of my life? Right. So when I sit here today and can say, I can turn that page without the pain, where I'm not outrunning my past, I welcome it and I'm grateful for it to come along in the journey with me, is huge. And like I said, I went from surviving to thriving. And the question that everyone always has, and I'll put it out there, is yes, I was able to create a healthy relationship with sex. Right? That's what people are always like, oh, how could you possibly? Well, a shit ton of work.
That is what, like, of all of the things that I just heard from you, I wouldn't, like, that is not the question that's going to come to mind for me. I don't know.
People's personal fear.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. That's how I see it. I see it's people's personal fear would be like looking at it now as a sexual being, having something in their past that wouldn't allow them to enjoy their bodies, who they are, who they're with. That's how I choose to interpret it.
That makes sense.
But it's a lot of work, and I can sit here today and say to the person who's listening to me, who's been through this, is going through this, that while there's no way that you will ever get out from underneath this. And what I used to tell myself is that I was broken beyond repair. That's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Totally.
It's all bullshit. We're never broken beyond repair. And our experiences are what build us into the person we are. People ask me, so Nancy, if you could undo it, would you? No. Without hesitation, I say no. And the reason is, at least today, maybe not years ago, I can say, this experience has made me who I am. All of these experiences have made me who I am, and I like who I am. Yeah. And I'm unwilling to give that up.
Yeah.
I survived. I also have the other side of it and say, well, no, I wouldn't give it up. I'm here. I'm thriving. I'm good. Why would I need to give it up?
Yeah. Yes, it took work, and you did the work required to heal. And it's a constant thing, I would imagine. I mean, I know that it is for me.
Yeah.
I know I'm healed and I'm healing. It's both.
Oh, absolutely. My joke is, you don't get to mental wellness. Someone hands you a certificate and you get to hang it on the wall and yay, you're all done. Good job. Congratulations. It's a daily practice, right? It's a daily practice. What I can say is my daily practice isn't as painful. It's just totally changed. My daily practice is really more to be able to see the challenges and the quote unquote fails as opportunities to remind myself that, okay, I have the skills, right? I didn't let this consume me. I have skills and I'm using them. It's an opportunity for the universe to remind me that I am on the wrong path. That was not where I was supposed to go. It's course correction, right? And that's why, for me, reframing is huge. I'm a big reframer. I'm a big, like I said, person who believes that the words that you use are very important and very powerful. And, that's why I do my affirmations every morning. And it's why I, clear my head with meditation. It's why I catch myself when I use words like and need and hope and wish that give all the power to whatever is coming next, to something outside of me.
Even I can't wait for. I've totally stopped that. I've tried to stop that. I've noticed it much more. It's no, I might be excited for, but I can wait.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Can I be patient? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I trust and believe, if this happens, no, when it happens. Mm-hmm. And those things don't sound like much maybe, but they are really, really powerful for me personally. That is definitely one of those pieces of what are the tools you use? Those are the tools that I use. Those are the tools that I dig into. Community is huge. This community, I can't say it enough. The community on LinkedIn that gathers around, in every moment is giving without wanting, and I'm using that word here, without wanting, expecting, desiring, intending anything in return. And that is, in my experience, that's pretty rare. And yet, what LinkedIn has showed me is there's a lot of us out there. There are a lot of us out there.
Yes, I love that. I really, really love that. And so many things you just touched on that are so important. And I want to acknowledge multiple of them. First of all, Brian really loves your affirmation posts, and I do too. They make me very happy. I want to acknowledge Jeffrey Johnston in the crowd, which I don't think I've seen your name before this live. So I'm so happy to welcome you.
You need to connect with him. He's amazing.
Awesome. Definitely will. He likes to say you are always free to tell yourself a new story about your past. Beautiful. And that Viktor Frankl said, my suffering is my opportunity. And it seems like you feel the same. I completely agree. I believe pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is completely linked to our outlook. And being able to have that awareness is the first piece. And then enables us to shift the perspective. So
awareness is such a fucking cool thing.
It is the height of all existence. Awareness of awareness is pure consciousness. So
absolutely. And that's one of the things that's been so cool about what's been happening for me in this part of my journey is that I am thank you, Jeffrey. I do appreciate that. I appreciate all of you guys. You have no idea what showing up for me means to me and how that fuels my soul and my heart. And just know. And now I forgot what I was saying because that's who I am. Okay, it'll come back.
Yes, well, okay. And you know what's hilarious is that I was going to say something and I forgot what I was saying too. So
here we are. There you go. I don't remember. We can just keep talking. Something will come up. I'm not worried. We were talking about the comment was about our pain and not having it to need to be suffering. Oh, being aware. Thank you, Kelly. Being aware. One of the coolest things for me in this past, I would say 2020 through now, has been my awareness of what's happening in each moment, not only in the moment, but in the grand scheme, all this stuff that's happening and this synchronous nature of it, the lack of resistance, the seamlessness of it, the just the way it's flowing. I've just had a year where everything that's happening keeps reminding me and affirming for me that I'm doing exactly the right thing. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I am fulfilling my purpose. And then I'm helping other people, which is part of my purpose. It is. It's a large part of my purpose. But that being aware of it and that gratitude that comes from being aware of it is epic. And I've never been this aware, and I've never had my life been this synchronous. And I've been doing the work for a long time.
Oh, you're just saying that reminded me of It reminded me what I was gonna say. We did it. It took a second, but we got it. Oh, this isn't a song. Okay. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love these comments. Yes, you're exactly where you need to be. You're loved by so many people here and beyond. Beautiful, beautiful. But you know what? It made me, listening to you made me realize too, like, and I don't know if this is about reframing or if it's just about literally like us creating hope for the future. But like, I do believe that the needle is shifting, because you had said earlier that like the most frustrating part is that like since you experienced all these things to now, it feels like the conversation hasn't changed. And I agree that the conversation hasn't happened or changed nearly as much as it needs to, or responsibly should have by this time. But I do believe it's changing. And I think part of it is us, I think a huge part of it is us just doing this. Like we could talk about anything here, you know, and we could just like so easily like have a conversation about superficial things, but we're not. We're digging deep in, and like maybe making people uncomfortable. And like I'm cool with that. Like I have no problem with that.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because just by having this conversation, it's changing, right? And I have found people like you, these beautiful, and I tell you this all the time, I know, like sort of behind the scenes, but this beautiful, wise soul that came into my life, right? How else we would have connected? I don't see that other than this way, but have come into my life and are willing to have the uncomfortable discussion, that don't feel like they need to pull away from it, and actually are kind of comfortable having it because they're in a place where, they get it and they're open and they're grounded in themselves and they've learned how to be and sit with and not have to fix. So there has been, over the last 3 months that I've been on LinkedIn doing this, there has been a shift in that I have found people who welcome this conversation.
Yes. And I think the thing is that they're there, and we are limited by our own hope.
Oh, nice to meet you as well. Thank you for being here. Please, okay, if we're not connected, please reach out and say, hey, I was listening to you on CDK's show, would love to connect, because this is hard for me because I'm having the conversation. I'm trying to look at the comments. I'm trying to connect with everyone, and I will go back. But please. I'm
doing a comment with Mahita and with you, so that we get a notification of just the two of your names, and maybe that'll remind as well.
There you go.
Okay, boom.
David Munford. I am a lucky girl, I have to tell you.
We've got so many beautiful people.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, like, I think we are limited by our own hope. And I'm seeing this for my own self, so I'm just like articulating it. But like, if there is any residual doubt remaining on any level, like whether that's like our soul level or our mental capacity to understand, or in the body or whatever, like, then it exists. And it's amazing because as I say this, I literally can feel like deep in my gut where that is. And now I'm actively moving the energy up throughout my body, and it's like right on my nose now. I'm just gonna like push it out, because I don't want it anymore. I don't need it. I don't need it.
Good girl.
You don't need it.
Good girl.
And like, I hope if you saw that and were like, whoa, what is she doing? Not to specifically to you, but to anyone. Like, it's literally somatic, okay? Like, this stuff exists physically in the body. And as someone who has experienced physically the trauma, I am sure you know that it does. And so there is immense power, like actually like super woman power in being able to transmute energy. And so what I just did was that, and I want there to be no mistake of that.
That's
because the beauty in that is actual healing. And like, part of it, I think, is that once we are open, once we're able to move the energy in that way and up and out of the body, and can let go of any doubts or any fears or any negative energy that has the ability to really control our lives, that's when these conversations become possible. That's when the teacher appears because the student was ready. Like, all of these attitudes and things are so true and so real, and they're not just like coffee table book quotes.
Right, they're not just things we say, they're not just one-offs, they're, you know, things we embody. And I love that you brought that up, because the body experiences everything that you do. And so I think one of the places that we often neglect healing is our body. You know, like, every cell in my body went through it with me. And we now know, yes, she's sniffing my face. We now know that trauma can be passed on in our DNA. So you need to know that it's encoded in your body, and you need to honor that as much as you honor anything else in the healing process. Like, that is, and it's one that gets left behind because it's not widely embraced in our society
yet. It's becoming more widely embraced.
Right.
And I only say that because I really believe that. Like, every single day I'm seeing more experiences where I'm like coming close to these like light healers and light workers, people who have the ability to like use their voice to literally like enter a person's soul space and help guide trauma out of the body. And then you ask them, and I've like literally witnessed this by people who are not just like living in caves like these. And no, I mean, I guess there's nothing really wrong with living in a cave. Like,
but it's not fringe. It's not people.
It's not fringe. Exactly. Like, this is like real. There is science behind this in so many different ways. You can like look into it if you want to, but I've literally witnessed people who were experiencing like an 8 or a 9 in pain on the 10 scale to a 0 just by like being open to healing energy. So that's insane. And in a great way. And I think it just becomes more and more normal. And I also just want to urge you and everyone to remember that like this is the natural evolution of humanity. It doesn't always feel like it because of where we are at and what we are seeing. So much pain and so much triggering and also like nasty just things out in the world. Like, I'm not tone deaf to understanding like the current events.
Not Pollyannaing it. We're not.
I really do. Exactly. I just also at the same time know that we as a human race are limited by our own ability to hope and believe and understand that the narratives around scarcity, around inability to do XYZ are constructed to have us become our own worst enemies. And so the opposite of the scarcity is abundance. And it's also our natural state of being. Like, it's the abundance. And you talked about like trauma being encoded in the body and the cells in the body. Well, cells naturally regenerate. And we can actually tune into high frequencies where we can naturally regenerate those cells and they can heal fully. And then we don't pass them on. What we do is we pass on very healed and very connected and clear DNA that has let go of the trauma that generations and generations before has been like bouncing around inside because of all the silence and the rage and all of these things that like as a collective we're just healing from, and it's beautiful.
It is. And I've only started to toy with the idea of my own energy. And we had a brief conversation while we were waiting to go live here where, you know, I have those moments where something just like, I'll be in the middle of a conversation and I'm like, well, what's coming to me is, right? Hello, Reggie. I don't know where it's coming from necessarily. Like, it's wisdom that surprises me sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, I'm willing to entertain the idea that, right, and this isn't really entertaining the idea because I believe there's a universal energy that's flowing through all of us.
Yes.
And so if I believe that, what's to keep me from believing that energy, when it's flowing into me, may bring wisdom of its own?
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's what's happening. And I just had this conversation with my friend yesterday, because it's so funny. Like, at different parts of the conscious awakening journey, people have different reactions to what is divine. And so it's like, he was like, that's freaky, or that's crazy, or it was so strange, or something like that. And I was like, it's strange because it's one of the first times maybe it's happening. But
Right.
the more you go on this journey, the more synchronicity becomes like a natural part of the life. And I explained it like this. I was like, it was in the body, it sort of is like, oh, that's weird. And then it turns into like, I am glorious. This is glorious as it manifests before me. And it's like, just thank you, God. Like, I know that this is the natural way of how energy can operate and transmute. And I think another thing too is like, we have as a society agreed that the collective unconscious exists for like since Freud or since Carl Jung, right? That's a long time. So why are we just now being like, oh wait, yes, collective consciousness also exists?
Because we had to get desperate.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I love that you had an answer to that because it was a rhetorical question, but that's the right answer.
No, and for me, it's like, if you look at all the ways your life is synchronous. And so my mom and I will call it witchy. Like, I'm a little witchy, if I'm, I can, like, totally finish someone's sentence. They're about to say it. I say it, vice versa. But my mom and I have the one heart feels another. Like, if I'm thinking of her or she's thinking of me, often that prompts a phone call. Yeah. And it's absolutely the time when we were both thinking of each other. So that happens all the time to me. So I mean, could it be coincidence? I personally don't think so.
No, there's so much.
Right? It happens with frequency that doesn't resonate with me. So if you're in a place of not feeling your own energy or feeling like this is a little kooky, I've been there. And some of it was about fear of giving up the beliefs I had, fear of what it meant to be someone who could alter her energy and maybe even the energy of people around her, right? Like, my mom feels my energy 3,000 miles away. And so giving up those old beliefs, dealing with the fear I had about this maybe being true. Look for those synchronous moments in your life. Look for the things that like really just, how'd that happen? And consider maybe, just maybe, there's a bigger force at play, and there's a connectedness to humanity that is flowing through each of us. And it's there for each of us to harness. I have a nerve injury in my arm, and that's never going to heal past where it's at. And so it does cause me daily pain. And one of the ways that I learned to deal with it is when I'm in pain, I picture a cockpit of an airplane. Nothing there is familiar to me. I couldn't tell you what a single button, lever, flip, dial does, right? But there's so many choices in there of things that I have no idea what they control. And I will picture turning and flipping and doing whatever and find the one that is in control of my pain. And like turn it down or flip it off. And that's been huge for me in terms of my pain.
Amazing visualization. Wow.
And that, again, to me, is that this is the power that's within me. This is the ability my brain and body have when they work together in tandem, when I don't fight the natural flow of energy within me because of fears and having to let go of old beliefs and maybe adjusting to new ones. It's not so easy maybe to lean into, but after fighting it for so many years and it keeps coming back to me, I am very much enjoying giving myself the opportunity to introduce myself to it and learn and be curious about it.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting to hear you say that, because you're definitely on your journey and finding what it means to you. For me, I know I'm at this point where I'm like, I don't question it. It happened, like synchronicity happens, and I know like exactly why, what is happening. And like I said, I was explaining this to my friend yesterday. Tell me, we were walking, right? And then there was this is like so normal. There was like a bench, okay? And then I hop on the bench and I start just like walking along on the bench, and I'm like dun 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 dun. And then a half an hour later, we're still walking around the city, and someone rides their bike past, and what song is he singing? Dun 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 dun. And like, that is quite literally the best example of on a harmonic frequency vibration out in the universe, and like what that looks like to align. Because
the funny thing is, I'm laughing because yes, it is, but I've had that music moment where the song is stuck in your head, right? And you can't get it out of your head. And it's happened recently. There was a song stuck in my head. I couldn't get it out of my head. And the next morning I woke up and I asked Alexa to play me some music. It happened to be 80s music, because that's what I love. And the first song she played was the song that had been stuck in my head from the night before.
I love it.
Of all
so many times I'll sing a song, then the radio comes on, it's that song in the same spot. Like, that's clairvoyance too, which is like insane. Like, I need to stop saying insane, because it's not. It's just like,
it's mind blowing on some.
That's what it is. I don't know. Like,
it's mind blowing on some level when you experience it, right? Even if you believe in it, it's mind blowing. Even when you experience it, even if you have before. And I think that's gratitude. I think that's a piece of gratitude of like, wow, how infinite this is, right? It just keeps happening, and I'm aware of it, and I'm tuned into it, and oh my gosh, there it is again, shout out to the harmonica.
Wow.
Yeah, learning about people. But I know that people feel this is like wacky, and I don't have the words for it. All I can say is I've experienced it, therefore I can't deny it.
I don't know though. I feel like, no, I don't mean to just jump immediately into saying I don't know though, because what you just said is so true and valid and right. And I've experienced that too. I think what my brain was moving faster than my mouth was able to, is that I'm surprised by a lot of people and their willingness and their openness and their other experiences. So it's almost like, I think we have this way of like, maybe assuming that people won't get it, and then we almost close off. Or at least
it's one of those kind of taboo topics, right? Because if you walk around with it and you're not in a community that values it or talks about it, then you feel like, oh, I have to keep this secret because this isn't what we do here, right? And then you start to connect with people who actually live in this space. And you realize, yes, there are more of us who are living in this space than you ever realize.
Reggie gets it. Synchronization occurs when we wear Adidas on the same day.
Okay, and Reggie, that is brilliant. But I would say like 6 out of 7 days of the week, he's going to be wearing.
Oh my god, that is really funny. But you know what? If that resonates with you, then yeah, exactly.
If that's what the universe speaking to you looks like, not for me to knock it at all. Not at all.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you, Carl. Oh my gosh, if you're not connected with Carl, everybody here, if you don't know one another, just send out the beacon, send out that connect request and say that you heard them in the comments here, whatever they said resonated with you, whatever it is that's true for you. But connect. This is an amazing, amazing community. This is an amazing community.
And these people are very all open to the magic that exists around us, and won't judge how you may see that or may not see it yet.
And they are 1,000% comfortable with authenticity. Yeah, that's showing up as you are. I always say, like, the part of the biggest value of my story, my journey, is the in-between ugly parts, right? If I was me going through it and I saw me now, I'd be like, I hate that bitch. Like, look at her. She's all happy and she's got her crap together. Like, she has no idea what it's like to be me. No, I very much know what it's like to be you. And that's the space that we need to stay in, right? The conversation, the bit that I threw out there about, well, every cell in my body did exactly what it was supposed to do. There's somebody out there who's feeling really guilty about that, really conflicted by that. And they've now heard it, and it changes everything.
Yeah.
So the snotty crying on the floor days, the falling asleep, because I've cried myself to sleep and exhausted myself, the days of not showering, a million.
Now that we're doing that, I had this memory the other day too, that I used to like literally physically like bang my head. I remember that, and I was like, girl, it's okay. Yeah. Like, I just like held myself, was like, oh,
Yeah.
But like I felt it in my body once I remembered. I really did. So it's like, I'm glad that you started listing those things off, because like we all have those things. We might just like totally ignore them or pretend that they didn't happen, but like they're existing still within us, and it's okay. Like
they're still happening for me. I still have those days. I had a day, I think it was last weekend, where I got up, I went to the kitchen, I gathered every snack I might want and a bunch of water bottles, and I brought them back to my bedroom and set them on my nightstand. I brought my computer in there. I literally moved everything within arm's reach of me and sat in the bed all day. And I did not get out. I didn't feel like I wanted to get out. I didn't feel like what was out there was something I intended or desired to interact with. And so I stayed in the bed. And so those days still happen for me, where the world seems too big, the world is too much. And I think that's also important to acknowledge. Like I said, this is not a journey where you get to a place, someone hands you the certificate and you hang it on your wall and you're like, I'm good for life. I'm good to go. Life is constantly reminding me of where I've been and where I'm going, reminding me of what I've learned from my journey, challenging me to find the positive in the experiences that feel like they could be nothing but negative. And without that contrast, I don't know how I would know when I'm having a good day and be able to fully appreciate that, fully just have that sincere connection with how appreciative and grateful I am for that. When those moments end and I can move on, when the cloud lifts and I feel light and joyous and laugh easily and smile easily again. And so to people out there, like, if you have that day, even if you have those days, it doesn't mean it's undone all the work you've done and all the gains you've made. It's absolutely not that. I've told this story before during the pandemic. I was working at my computer one day, and often what happens, and I'm starting to get better at this, is I will work, and then I look up and it was like 12:15, right? And this voice came from nowhere. It said, you can go an hour longer without eating. And I thought, oh my, that's an old voice. I haven't heard that one in a while. Yeah. And what I did was said, no, I'm getting up right now and I'm eating. And I went to the kitchen and I put together something that was healthy for me to eat. And then I took the moment to think. That came back to me. And look what I did. I reacted completely differently than I would have 20 years ago, right? I said, no. I'm taking care of my body, right? You don't roll around here anymore, right? There's a new administration in charge, but that gave me the opportunity, right, to say, wow, look how far I've come. I handle that kind of nicely, right? These skills that I've gained are not, there's sometimes I feel like I have that like I'm a fraud attitude, like this isn't really true. But those moments remind me, this is how I live my life. I look back on my affirmation journals and there's times where I think like, oh, this whole positivity thing, I'm kind of like, do I really do this all the time? Is this really who I am and how I live? And I can look back at the dates in that journal. And I can remind myself, oh, you don't get to tell that narrative. That's completely untrue. The narrative is you are this person. This is you. This is who you are. This is the growth that you have fought tooth and nail for. And don't you dare treat my friend Nancy like it's anything less than remarkable and exceptional and extraordinary.
That's fucking right. I love that.
I mean, there are also times I look in the mirror and I look at myself and I think an outfit makes me look dumpy, and I tell myself to shut the fuck up and walk away from the mirror, because that's bullshit. You couldn't look that way, and there's no reason to look at yourself and even have that thought.
I don't even know what dumpy is.
Right.
So,
Well, that's my word, and it's, it's
I'm messing with you.
No, right, exactly. It's arbitrary. It's arbitrary, right. And it's an attempt for my brain to sort of pull me back to, right, and pull me back into that comfortable discomfort that's not the right kind of, we want to have comfort with discomfort, or be comfort with being uncomfortable, but that comfortable discomfort that we can tolerate because we know how to. I can live on breadcrumbs. My needs don't matter. I don't need a voice. I've survived all this and more. I know how to live in that space, but from day to day, I owe it to myself to remind myself that just because I can doesn't mean I ever have to again.
Yeah.
And so when that part of me wants to pull me back, right? Come on, we miss you.
Yeah.
I don't fit in that life anymore. I mean, part of my divorce, the realization was that my ex-husband was in love with the woman I used to be. I wasn't the woman he married. If anyone changed in the relationship, it was me. I broke the contract. I grew beyond our relationship. And then I got
That's
to the point
for me, like, oh no. There's so much pressure. I'm just gonna like sort of speak on this for a second.
Oh, I understand.
For a woman to like get a man and settle down and like literally destroy other women to get there.
Oh yeah, that's that lack of that scarcity.
Not only accepted but encouraged. Like,
right. So if you get a good guy, then somehow that means there's not another good guy out there anywhere that could possibly come into my life. So yeah, I've got to step on you. I've got to keep you down to raise myself up. And absolutely, I want you to talk more about this, but I've talked about this in the divorce process. Go ahead. This is, I love that this is like, okay, so Karina, I am double her age. I literally could be her mother. So I think it's interesting to look at both ends of it though, like in the younger side, the younger person and the younger us that feels all this pressure from that end, right? And then from being on the other side of it where I am, how that I didn't have the clarity you have when I was your age.
I hope that a lot of the young women my age find the clarity I have, because I'm at a point where it's literally like, I'm going to just marry myself and really fall in love with myself and become the man that I always used to thought I needed. And guess what? I'm like already there. And by the way, we have fun. Like, I'm good.
Great match.
It's a great match, yes. And I'm not even kidding. I wake up in the morning whenever I want. Ain't nobody's in my face or whatever. I'll kiss my own reflection. Like, I'm just like, I love you. Like, and the thing about it is that if I get to a point where there's a person and their soul is capable of accepting my soul in the way that I accept myself, then they get the honor of being around me.
I love that word. I love that they do. They get the privilege and honor of being around you. And there's so many lies we're told, man. We've got the, this whole thing, like you've got to get married. And not only do you have to get married, you must do it by a certain age. And then you have to, have the kids.
You have to have kids.
Yeah, the kids. I got engaged. People wanted to know when I was married. At my wedding, people were asking me, well, when are you having kids?
Having kids.
Yeah. I mean, it's just this like constant.
When do they ask you when you have kids? When are you dying?
Exactly.
Like, you're dying.
When are you giving up on life?
Yeah, literally.
But
This is a good
that's
question.
also why you get to the other side. First of all, I knew that I didn't want to have children. I knew that if I chose to have kids, I'd be an amazing mother. But I also knew things about myself that in my relationship that made it so that children were not the right thing for me. But that was my first fail, right? I didn't want kids. Then I come to be in a marriage. I got married at 26 years old. And I remember saying to my ex-husband, I was worried about being divorced by the time I was 30. Fast forward 16 years of marriage. And it was not all bad. I will say that he's a good guy. He's really thriving without me, which is what I suspected would be true. And I'm happy for him. But I had failed once at not wanting kids. And then the next failure was not wanting to be married anymore. Because if I had, minus the children, the pinnacle of what we're striving for, why would I throw it away? And I made this commitment.
Have a ring on your finger.
Right. I made this commitment at 26 years old, and I'm 40 and unhappy and unfulfilled. And I feel like I fail as a wife every day because I am not loving this man the way he deserves to be loved. And I know that's hurting him. So is my obligation to my 26-year-old self who made that commitment, and I have to stick with it, even if it's killing both of us in different ways? Or do I get to honor the person I am today and say, you know what? I completed my marriage. And there's a place for me beyond this. I can stay in this, but I know what the outcome is. And it became fear of the unknown. Take that chance. Go out there, honor you, versus the fear of the known, which I had felt over the course of 16 years and was continuing to weigh on me and eat at me, to the point where I remember being in therapy one day and my therapist said, you realize you've recreated your abuse dynamic, right? And of course I was like, no. Please. No, I did not. And she goes, okay, so you don't have a voice. You keep him happy to keep the peace. You don't need anything. You survive on breadcrumbs. And she went through all those pieces, all those dynamics. And I looked at her and I went, fuck. I recreated
too.
Right? I did it, right? And so that was another eye-opening thing of like, okay, first of all, you don't put the wellness plaque on the wall. But yeah, who am I honoring? Do I honor that 26-year-old girl and put myself back in the situation and know how that diminishes over time? And that known versus the unknown of doing something different than I had seen anyone in my life do, doing something different than society would have encouraged me to do. And the only way for me to survive really was to take that chance. I'm so different than I was. So, I mean, it's so interesting because, the one thing I liked about LinkedIn is I'm not connecting with old people who knew me when. These are new people who see me here. But it's also the thing is that you don't know what I was like before this, like in my marriage and how that was Green River. And how I came back to the real me.
I love that. What is so beautiful is I feel like you just mostly answered this question about the clarity part, which I wanted to go back to is forever back in the chat, but this is such a good question because so much of what you just said touches on for me why, and I don't really know where this clarity comes from beyond it's my mission and my purpose in life to end all cycles of abuse on earth. Just slight mission.
I'm going to be known as the woman who changed the narrative on sexual abuse. So you and I, we've got yes.
Got it.
We got this.
But I love that because I think that partly the clarity, first of all, to me, clarity is a part of my daily prayer. I pray the 7 blessings of life. And Reggie has seen me do this. So I know that, I don't know if you caught that when it was happening, but clarity is blessing number 3. And the first is innocence and gratitude. those go hand in hand to me.
Mm-hmm.
So once that's ripped away from you, everything else becomes very hard foundationally to build up on.
Yeah.
And we all have different areas we need to focus on. But the second one is creativity, and it is attached to, let's see, innocence is attached to gratitude. Oh, enlightenment. So in these moments of creative nature, which is totally my nature, all of these wisdom and enlightenment comes. And then blessing number 3 is peace and dynamism. And with that comes clarity. And so I think that is one way of looking at that for me. But there's other things that you just touched on before are so important, because all of what my journey has led me up until this point is I've had a lot of challenges, even though I'm young. And again, some of them maybe don't look as brutalizing or as violent as maybe others, but I can sure as hell tell you that whatever stimulus I received, my responses ended in evolution, enlightenment, growth, and meditative practice out the ass. And that has healed me in so many ways. And that is where a lot of clarity comes from. And in that clarity, I'm able to see that before I am any role I play in society, before I am a woman, or before I am a artist, or a soon-to-be wife, or anything, I'm just a human being. And that
you're not just human.
I am fully and abundantly a human being. And that gives me so much power. And I Tim's comments just saying shout out to your Amanda's.
I carry a lot of
masculine energy.
I definitely do.
Possess both. We all possess divine feminine and divine masculine energy.
Yeah.
And the tale as old as time is that, especially for women, and this is the International Day of the Woman, and it's Women's History Month, but it's Women's History all day, every day. Okay, let me just say. But the tale of what has happened in the Holy Inquisition and in colonialization in the history of the world is that women were vilified and named witches, and there was mass genocide, and we were attempted to be wiped out. But then not actually wiped out, just oppressed to a point where our bodies could be fully controlled. And we still see it today. And so there's a lot of parallels when we talk about the evolution of race and the evolution of gender in these things, because the Holy Inquisition and the Spanish Inquisition, or however you want to look at it, this purposeful oppression of minority peoples throughout history all came from the same source. And it's built a collective ego, and it's built narratives around scarcity, and it's built pain around oppression, and all of these like facets and subsects of society in which we categorize ourselves into. And there's a lot of trauma that comes along with that. And to me, I'm aware that my purpose on this planet is to end all cycles of abuse, starting in each and every home. And that begins in each and every home, which homes the soul, and that's the body. So that's where the clarity comes from.
I love that.
Not
my answer was far less profound. Okay, mic drop. My answer was far less profound, and it's awareness.
But they're the same answer. Isn't
that
beautiful?
Yeah.
I tried to do a mic drop, and then I actually dropped everything.
Yeah, it's that awareness that allows me to have the clarity. My awareness and willingness to accept whatever comes in that. Thank you. In those moments, each moment, right? My awareness and willingness to accept whatever it is, not make it what I want it to be, not twist it into something that feels acceptable or will be received well by other people.
Yeah, I love that. The woman who changed the narrative on sexual abuse.
That's me. The universe knows my plan. The universe is well aware of my plan.
That's right. And the universe has sent you here to carry out these things.
It's given me every tool,
This is a
and
good
it's
question.
given me every opportunity.
Oh, this was what I meant to click on, but this is a good point as well. So
That is a good point.
Control,
Yeah.
greed, power of control. Yeah, but that's old news. We're moving forward with power and divine feminine, right?
Well, one of the things is I think it's important to understand where it came from, but to make sure that our words and our mindset is moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, because what's the point of being aware of our past and if we don't transmute the energy? And that's where and this is such a good point. That's the real thing that is also occurring right now. Not only are we seeing women step into roles of power, which is going to be so necessary because it's like never happened before, but what we're also seeing is that men are becoming aware of their divine feminine energy. And the thing is that it's within all of us. And the way that women have been subjugated all throughout time, not only have women been subjugated, but all things feminine have become shameful. And
especially feminine beings. The feminine energy in men, man, we can have a whole nother conversation.
That's what I'm saying.
What are we doing to our men?
Well,
what are we doing to our men?
It's yes, and it's I don't know. It's hard to put into words what I just had go on in my head, but it's like it's all of us. And the way I see it too, being this like much younger perspective, is that all things polar and all things binary are totally ending. And so we have to understand and accept that like there's a whole scale of paging your estrogenity.
Sorry, that's what I was laughing at before. Paging your estrogenity. Tim is so funny, man.
Y'all, I don't know if y'all are ready for this, what I'm about to say, but it's like literally everything exists on a spectrum. I know people who are non-binary. I know people who are trans. There are people out there who don't who are just, like I said, gender non-binary. And it's literally like we look at gender and it's like, why do I have to fill out this box for you? I don't really know. I don't really care.
How am I meant to find?
And like it might be really hard for people to understand, and LinkedIn is like an interesting platform to have a conversation on because just the nature of like the audience. But the thing is, like, whether we accept it or not, all things polar are changing and transcending to a level where they just become totally irrelevant. And I mean that on literally every level. I mean that what I see happening in this world today, right now, is a decentralization of money. Like, I know it doesn't maybe look like it, but it's happening. Like, mark my words. Mark my words.
It was heard here.
Come back whenever you're 98 and be like, Karina,
you were right.
I mess with Nancy, but you were right.
I'm going to come back to you and say thank you for bringing my awareness to this so that I was able to grow and change and not be thrown off course because of it.
That's beautiful. And I'll say, hell yeah, Nancy, you were there by my side the whole time.
Now push me over to get French fries.
Yeah. Where's the French fries disappear? Shout out to polar bears is the biggest takeaway of what I was saying.
There you go. Yes. Thank you, Tim. We are looking for estrogenity, and we are shouting out to polar bears, and we are allowing our brains to be in a space where it doesn't have to be black and white.
Exactly.
It's really comfortable, right? If things are black and white, it's really comfortable because there's right and there's wrong. There's yes and there's no. There's black and white, but there's black, white, and gray. And, so many things between. And all of these ends, there's a whole middle.
It's a spectrum.
Right, that we've ignored. We've ignored the whole middle because it makes us uncomfortable. There's a great TED Talk called 50 Shades of Gay. And it's fantastic. And I can't remember who does it, but it's that idea of like, hey, not everybody fits on one end or the other. And just because maybe you do, or you feel you do, we don't get to discount the whole middle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally get that. Everything is becoming much more fluid. The way that the world is evolving is just becoming much more fluid. And being more comfortable with that is going to be our huge strength as we evolve as a race of humanity. And, I believe in the power of truth. And it definitely has taken a really long time for a lot of these things to come to the forefront. And I'm talking like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years.
Evolutionary years.
Yeah. And so it's like only natural. But growth happens exponentially. And the fact of the matter is that we can be patient while not accepting the bullshit anymore. I can accept from God what is, but I can't. There's like this amazing quote that I want to read, and then we should probably wrap up here.
I know. I actually have my show at 5, so.
Oh my God, yeah, we need to wrap up. But I just want to read this really quick.
We're paying attention, Tim.
Let's see. Oh no, it's like not the right song that I'm looking at. I could just put the actual song on. Hold on. This might take a little second.
You're fine.
I know.
We've got a little second. I'm taking with me the I can't wait piece because I can wait. And that's the thing is I can find contentment and still be ambitious. I can find contentment and still have purpose. I can find contentment and, right? That's, to me, I
acceptance versus complacency.
Yeah.
Like I can accept what's happening right now without being complacent and not wanting to grow ever again. Like that's not the same thing.
McDonald's. How did we get to McDonald's, Tim?
Oh, because someone said French fries. Oh yeah, you said.
Oh, I did say. Okay, here's the other beauty thing of trauma. I continue to have trauma brain. I have the mental ability to hold on to short-term memory, even long-term memory. It's still very impaired for me. That's why we use compensatory strategies.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I totally was zoned out with what you were just saying because I was looking at this. I would not lie to you.
You're fine. I was just really telling you, don't ever ask me to remember anything, basically.
Well, that's hilarious timing. I love it, and I love you, Nancy. Let's see. There's this song that's amazing, or this whole album that's amazing. That there's like an intro, and this is part of it.
Overhear y'all conversation just now.
Can you hear that?
I usually mind my own business, but something moved me to speak to y'all this morning. I ain't judging though. Hell, I agree with most of what I heard. They say don't question God, but like me say I was questioning you, not God. Besides, I guarantee you got more answers than we do. Always asking everybody what would Jesus do, but they never ever ask Jesus. You know what I'm talking about? A lot of folks believe anything you tell them if it sounds good enough. It was crazy as a razor blade necktie, but he was a master manipulator, so people got behind him. I can make a really convincing argument right here, right now, that Jesus was as black as Shaka Zulu. But to what end? Arguing about it would only divide us to be conquered. It's like never opening a package that could have saved your life, because you was too damn busy arguing over whether UPS or FedEx delivered it. You how that sound?
You ain't looking like it.
Now stop being stingy and let me get a swig of that liquor before I run up in this church.
That's the intro. There's so many good lines there.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh. See how that sounds? And it's so true. Like arguing over
yeah, I love that.
The message instead of just
UPS or FedEx, right? What's choose your battles, what's important.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot also for people needing credit for certain things. Like, Does it matter whose idea it was?
Sometimes, but not usually.
Yeah, usually I think sometimes it is, but when ego gets in the way of it, then.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has been putting just both amazing comments on all sides of the spectrum, from warm, supportive, lovely sharing of your own experiences to those of you who do this beautiful thing, which is make me laugh and smile. And that I'm equally appreciative of.
I am too. Thank you, Nancy. This is the longest I've gone on any of these episodes, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like, it was an amazing conversation, and just I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and being true. That's one thing that came up earlier, and I forgot to ask the question about, like, you think it's possible to become addicted to being vulnerable? My short answer is I think it's possible to become addicted to being anything, but the biggest and most important thing is that we are authentic and true to what is actually happening in a moment. And that doesn't mean appearing as such. It just means actually being that way. And that's something that, like, takes a certain level of balance. But balance is,
because I'm trying to imagine what addicted to being vulnerable looks like or feels like.
I feel like what it could look like is the thing is, to me, you can be addicted to anything. So the idea that, like, being addicted to vulnerability would maybe be like telling like your story without it feeling like you're telling your story to empower. You're just telling your story.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say, if I was telling my story for me.
Yeah, in a way that, like, and it's also okay to tell your story for you, but to a point to where it's happening so much that it's like you're not
right.
There's no real reason, because the thing is, like, authentic vulnerability is so that we can show up in the world to not only heal parts of ourselves, but to guide others in the healing. And so,
go ahead.
No, you finish.
We're going to fight over this. Is FedEx or UPS? For me, it's, again, that if I was telling the story to be reassured by others that I was on the right path, to need the validation, or anything along those lines, that would maybe feel like addicted to vulnerability to me. Whereas I actually don't, I know it's seen and perceived as vulnerability, and that's the point and purpose. And yes, I am becoming vulnerable, but it's empowering to me. I'm not afraid of doing it at all. I have zero fear around it. So doesn't feel courageous to me to tell my story. It feels.
But that's why it's courageous. Right. Because courage is one step over fear. So fear doesn't really actually exist where courage does. It's stepping in. It's stepping out.
Yeah, stepping out of it. Yeah.
I think it's like, and it looks like Jeffrey wrote a blog on vulnerability, and Carl has an ebook coming out on vulnerability.
Yes, he does.
On it for that reason as well. But maybe we're going to need to have another conversation about this.
I'm happy to come back. I'd love it. So, but I am going to cut this short. I'm going to do this active self-care.
Sure. Is there a girl? All right. Bye, guys. Love you.